No, that's a stupid turd. Report navigation bug.
Is slowing down because of President Trump's mismanagement.
In any conditions.
Pull flight info from notes, send to mom.
And get the new Samsung Galaxy S.
Potential for these multi-hatted roles, like the commander of EUCOM and the SAC the Supreme Commander Allied.
Consumers less prosperous, they don't work. They cost jobs at the hands of consumers, of employees, of American exporters, American manufacturers. And I think it's fascinating. Anthony alluded to this, you alluded to kind of the Trump voter. There is a way to actually extract some costs from the American economy. It's called debt and deficits, while you target tax incentives to reshore or to revitalize specific domestic industries. That is not what Donald Trump is doing. He cannot articulate what this is going to do to revitalize. He just kind of throws that in as a talking point at the very end of some of his crazy rants or his changing of his mind on tariffs or not. But consider that. If you wanted to revitalize a domestic industry or reshore a domestic industry, you would do it through tax incentives or direct subsidies. The only cost to the American economy and American voter there is ultimately in debt and deficits, right? We would be providing some leniency or handing out money essentially from the Treasury, but you would be doing it with the goal of rewarding that Trump voter or the non-Trump voter who works in the manufacturing space or in the farming space or whatever it might be to strengthen an industry. In this case, what he's doing is he's actually putting that cost on the American consumer. He's putting that cost on the manufacturer, on the American exporter. And I love the Prussian analogy because this goes back to an economic theory that nobody today supports, which I guess is also the final point on Vicent and Lutnick. I mean, we are in that chapter where it is fascinating to watch people just sully their reputation personally and in industry because there is absolutely no reason that they should be the defenders of this, but they are. And and that's on them. And that's part of their personal legacy as much as it is Donald Trump's.
It is. I'm sorry for my cough. That's me. I've got the spring allergy tickle, which I welcome because anything with spring in it is welcome news. But I mean, it's two stories, right? I mean, it is the indifference to the economic insecurity and struggling of the American people, which is everybody's problem, right? It is the indifference to something he used to care very much about, and that's market movement. And then it is the age-old story. I mean, and you were there 11 days. I mean, it is the age-old story, and I'd love to see Mr. Bissent's investment letter, but it is the age-old story of the people that reassure mostly Republicans who have fallen in line behind Trump that everything will be okay. You won't be finding out. Scott Bessent there, who I'd never heard of, but seemed to make a lot of people like you, Anthony, and like the Republicans who were looking at his cabinet sort of came into focus, feel better. And it is still, to me, a story that they'll study for 100 years. What happens to mostly men when they walk into Trump's now gold-gilded Oval Office?
Listen, I like I said, they want the power. They want to fly on Air Force One. They want to be in the president's motorcade, and that's what it is. And so they're willing to transact. And by the way, if you're a billionaire, you're willing to change your editorial standards at the Washington Post. You're willing to give them money for the inauguration. You're willing to, bullies, on the playground. There's a lot of kids in school that yield to the bully, and there's other people that won't yield to the bully. And we need more of the people that won't yield to the bully to stand up right now, particularly for the middle and lower middle income people.
Yeah, and I mean, in most schools, it's not just the bully that gets expelled when the bully gets caught. It's everybody that stood by and did nothing. And I wonder who in this story about the economy are the people standing by doing nothing.
Well, you look at Congress, and you look at how tariffs have been implemented in the past, and Congress quite proudly had control over that and wanted to exert some influence over that. And they haven't here. They've allowed the president to have kind of unilateral power over putting these very broad tariffs in place. And so there is a way by which they could challenge that. They could say, look, this is usually done in a very tailored way. That's not being the case this time. Congress could speak up. They could try to do that differently. And I'm just go back to something that Anthony and Dave were both talking about. It's the way that all this is communicated to the American people. And so we could take debts and deficits, for instance. We've seen what Doge has done. We've seen these kind of small cuts around the edges and people losing their jobs, but it's not tackling this kind of fundamental, bigger problem. They may have squandered their opportunity to
explain that, because so much of the
it's tied up in the defense budget. It's tied in so-called entitlements. These are things that would really have to be changed or cut to make a market difference in the size of that debt deficit. Now they've kind of done something without a whole lot of explanation that's upset a lot of people, quite understandably. How do you then make the case for even deeper cuts? I think that's going to be difficult. Then I think about these trade policies and these tariffs policies as well. I mean, these are being characterized as these are reciprocal tariffs, and there's something that's kind of benign or good feeling about that.
Feels even.
Yeah, I feel like, Anthony could be a member of a golf club on Long Island. He could go visit David Jolly, who's a member of a different golf club. There's been an agreement among those two clubs. They can go play there at each other's clubs. There's a happiness to that. These are fundamentally retributive tariffs or retaliatory tariffs. He is casting about the globe, looking at what those tariffs are and making kind of changes out of pique, or he's finding, thinks that it's uneven. But there's no mutualism to this. There's no conversation taking place there. And the last thing I'll say is this is all happening incredibly fast. And yes, the uncertainty is really intense. But from the first day of this administration, they said they're going to, look at all of these countries, all of these trading relationships, develop these reports, and kind of figure all of this out. It's just a matter of weeks or months later that they're doing this. We don't know what the knock-on effects of that are going to be, and that's going to be a legacy of this as well. It's just the speed with which this was done, as we saw it with Doge, without really perhaps thinking through what the consequences of that might be. And I think that, going back to your first question to me, is what's fueling or adding to this level of uncertainty, the sense that this is happening, these are major changes. Have we spent enough time reckoning with or thinking about what the fallout from that might be?
I mean, I guess the last thing I would just point out is that Trump largely loses his sort of toehold on the issue of the economy when COVID hits and supply chains are disrupted all around the world. He's now disrupting them on purpose himself. And it just seems like an insane thing even for Trump, which is perhaps a faulty frame, but that's where I keep ending up on this. Anthony, it's fantastic to see you. Thank you for starting us off today. I'm going to go Google Prussians and see what else they were for. David Gura, thank you for coming back again. David Jolly, you're stuck with us for the hour. When we come back, the judge who ordered a stop to the deportation of migrants under the Alien Enemies Act is now chiding the Trump administration for disobedience. As Elon Musk and Donald Trump double down on their attacks on the judge, despite a warning from Supreme Court Justice John Roberts. Plus, another Republican faces constituents who are angry over all this chaos Donald Trump has unleashed and Elon Musk. This time it is in deep red Nebraska. We'll show it to you. And later in the broadcast, after backlash, the Pentagon backtracks on removing the page dedicated to the Army career of an undisputed American hero and baseball legend, the one and only Jackie Robinson. It was part of a Trump administration effort to scrub so-called DEI content that targeted sites about soldiers of color and their contributions to defending the United States of America. We'll bring you all those stories and more when Deadline White House continues after a quick break. Don't go anywhere today.
I used to leak urine when I coughed, laughed, or exercised. I couldn't even enjoy playing with my kids.
I leaked too. I just assumed it was normal.
Then we learned about Bulkamid, an FDA-approved non-drug solution for our condition.
It really works, and it lasts for years. It's been the best thing we've done for our families. Call 800-983-0000 to arrange an appointment with an expert physician to determine if Bulkamid is right for you. Results and experiences may vary.
When our numbers guy Frank goes on vacation, the deal's on the most affordable German-engineered car branded him.
And terrorists and cannibals and whatever. It's regular people. And some Trump voters are finding out about that in a very personal...
In 98, back with the muskets and all that, we're going to go end up at the Supreme Court. And Roberts is interesting. If you look at...
But I want to move to a related topic. We're going to jump ahead of the B block and talk about another immigration-related story, because I like talking about the meta stuff, the philosophical stuff, constitutions and everything, but I also want to talk about how it's affecting real people. So let's do that now. I hope that by now we all understand that the picture that has been painted by Donald Trump about mass deportation and the sort of immigrants that he is deporting don't match up with reality in the vast, vast majority of cases. This is not generally killers and terrorists and cannibals and whatever. It's regular people. And some Trump voters are finding out about that in a very personal sense, actually. This is a sad story, but it involves Bradley Bartell. He is a Wisconsin man who last November voted for Donald Trump. Now, after that, he had his honeymoon, and so he's married to a woman named Camila Munoz. On the way back from that honeymoon, they were in Puerto Rico. She was, you guessed it, detained by ICE. They asked her if she was an American citizen. She responded that she was not, but that she was married to one, and that her and her husband had taken steps to secure her legal immigration status. Okay, so again, it's true of many people. That normally would have counted for something, but we are unfortunately in very different times now. And so Bartell, he says that one of the reasons he voted for Trump was to hold criminal illegal immigrants accountable, and he is now expressing his regret because his wife is being held accountable. Now, when he says criminal illegal immigrants, he probably means something else. He's probably thinking of murderer or whatever. But the issue is that that's not what the Trump administration means when they say that. And they're very clear when you ask Carolyn Leavitt, well, what if they haven't committed any crime? She says, no, they're here. That's the crime. No, it's not. It's an administration. It's a civil violation. But that is what they mean. And so you get people like Camilla being caught up in this. And he goes on to say, emotionally, I'm concerned for her. It can't be easy being trapped in a room with 100 other people. They don't have anything in there. It's just so wasteful. I knew they were cracking down. I guess I didn't know how it was going down. And again, this is not about like dunking on him and his family. I feel terrible for him and his family. I don't want any of this to have happened. Trump was pretty clear, though, for 10 years or so about how much he utterly despises anyone who's here illegally. He hates them on a very personal level, and he has filled his administration with people who hate them on a very personal level. So it feels kind of like, oh, was always going to go down. I mean, I hadn't guessed Guantanamo Bay. That was new to me. But other than that, and so anyway, bear in mind, his wife has no criminal record. Okay, she is one of many individuals that are married or engaged to a U.S. citizen who's been detained by ICE for weeks. Many of these people have resided within the U.S. for years and don't have any criminal records. Again, that's why we keep highlighting all these cases. Now, I say that she doesn't have a criminal record. But the Trump administration has repeatedly pretended that administrative violations are criminal offenses. That's sort of the issue here. By the way, during the pandemic, she overstayed her visa because she was unable to get home to Peru with flights canceled and borders closed. Sort of an understandable situation considering what's happened. She stayed in the Dells, the area where they live, working jobs in food service and at a local farm. So the only thing that she did wrong was overstaying her visa. Again, the pandemic was happening, but that's also not a criminal violation of U.S. immigration law. It's an administrative violation. It can result in a bar to returning to the U.S. for up to 10 years, or it can be lawfully forgiven under a, quote, waiver of unlawful presence if the immigrant's spouse or immediate relative is a U.S. citizen, which he is in this case. And again, what did she do? She couldn't leave. We couldn't leave. It was a pandemic, and she was working. She was contributing, helping us during that time. It was a perfect opportunity to waive that. And by the way, she was detained back in February. She has been in a private detention center in Louisiana ever since then. We're paying for that. Needlessly, she could be off working, I don't know, in food service or whatever her job is. She could be doing that. She could be in post-marital bliss, maybe starting a family or something like that, continuing to contribute to our country as they both have been. But she doesn't get to do that, okay, because of where I guess she was originally from. And that is the only thing that matters. This is deeply identity-based. And it's not just her, as we discussed. Maybe we can bring up this last graphic where we'll see some other people who've been in very similar circumstances. But Tori, I hate to see this, and I hate the fact that if we wanted to, we could profile cases like this every day on the show. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm glad. First off, I'm really glad you are profiling this, because some people are like, no, some people are doing it. Well, who? And we're putting a face to the name and we're personalizing it. I also want to just highlight what the man said, the husband, when he said, I knew they were going to try and do this, but I didn't know how. And I just want everybody to understand that you might have thought you don't love the border, or, you know, you want cheaper gas, or you don't love the allies because you don't think that maybe they're paying their share, right? The way that Trump is going to fix that is not presidential. It's not with a scalpel. It's not with something thoughtful, and it's not with any kind of care. It's a jackhammer. This guy takes, what do you call them? Those things? Is that a jackhammer? I'm not real tool heavy, but
yes,
okay,
jackhammer.
A jackhammer, and what he does is ignore the rules that you thought were sacred and in place. So that poor husband didn't think, of course, his wife would be brought up into gang members and all that, because you thought that Trump would handle it correctly, responsibly, thoughtfully, because you said, quote, I didn't know how he was going to go about doing it. Well, guess what, guys? This guy is Bam Bam from the Flintstones, okay? He takes away the Paris Climate Accord because of that. He'll take us out of our allies and just treat them like crap. And all of this stuff is what you thought you were voting for, but instead of getting someone who is respected, you're getting Bam Bam to take you down. And when you get Bam Bam and you get power hungry, you're getting people like this poor woman who's now stuck this way. So for anyone out there who thought, this is the guy to do it, this is the guy to do it, think about the ways he has to do it. And think about the violence and the fear and the way that this country is not built for Bam Bam. That's my slogan for the day, John.
That's a bumper sticker for you. This country is not built for Bam Bam. Or maybe a really weird pop song lyric. That's how he's doing it. It's that strategy. And let's also like understand, why would you do this to a woman? Well, obviously because you utterly hate people like this. You would definitely do it for that reason. Stephen Miller does not need any excuse other than that he hates these people. He asked out a woman of Mexican descent or whatever in sophomore year of high school. She turned him down, and that was it. But anyway, he wrote a letter to Christina Aguilera or something, and she didn't respond, and that was it decades ago. But another reason you do that is because they just add her to the numbers. Hey, look, we detained another person. Well, okay, are they criminals? Yeah, sort of. She's sort of a crip. No, she's not. This isn't helping anyone. Why are we... They're talking about efficiency and cutting costs and everything. We're paying every day for this woman to live in this detention center. It's a private detention center. It is a profit-seeking organization, okay? So you are paying out the you're paying out the bam bam for her and many other people around the country just so that Tom Homan can be like, hey, the number's slightly bigger.
That's right.
And they are having trouble getting that number up. You know why? Because there aren't thousands of migrant murderers around the country. And so you can't find a murderer, you find Camilla.
That's
I guess. And that's who gets in there. So release her, for the love of God, release her. Release her for her sake, release her for her husband's sake, release her for America's sake. This isn't helping anyone.
Amen.
Okay, we're gonna take our first break. We've got more, including doggies, after this.
Is real. This White House is a perfect example of it. And I think this is also when there's this debate, which surprises me sometimes, whether or not we're in a constitutional crisis. Yes, we are. We've been in a constitutional crisis since we elected an insurrectionist and surrounded him with the trappings of the departments of the United States government, from the Department of Justice to the Department of Commerce to the Department of Treasury, you name it. Those trappings have normalized this behavior in an environment where it shouldn't be normalized. And with all due respect to Senator Schumer, the notion that it's not a constitutional crisis until the Supreme Court rules, that's not the case. Because the responsibility of the United States government in this case is to respond to the judge with the motion that says, look, we believe, or I guess the appeal, we believe that the president has certain authorities and we need an emergency hearing on those authorities that we believe prohibit us or prevent us from having to provide some of this information. It's not simply to say, no, judge, we're not providing it to you. And to have an attorney general that insults the judge and a White House that insults the judge as some type of legal tactic is ridiculous. But the final reason we have a constitutional crisis is because the United States Congress has collapsed. Because a United States Congress that was functioning today would have all of these characters from the administration in front of hearing rooms, in front of chairmen and chairwomen to answer the hard questions about why they are defying the law and why are they engaging in activities outside the bounds of this White House. This is where we're at. It's a constitutional crisis, regardless of what Caroline Leavitt wants to call it or not.
Christy, what happens next in what feels like outside the courtroom a real escalation against this judge, but inside the courtroom feels like something that's still going back and forth?
I'm so glad you raised that, because anybody who actually listened to this hearing or read the transcript of this hearing, it is so different than how it is being portrayed in the press by some of Donald Trump's allies. I mean, the judge is saying, actually, these are really hard questions. These are close questions. I actually don't know how I'm ultimately going to come out on the merits of this thing, whether or not the president's proclamation actually was legal under the Alien Enemies Act. I don't know. I'd like more briefing. I'd like more time to decide. So all I wanted to do was keep the status quo, make sure nobody's getting deported while I take some time to think about it. And he even said at the hearing at one point, I may come out your way. And so the crazy thing is, if they actually just cared about what the result was in the case and not turning this judge into some boogeyman, that he's like some evil radical left lunatic, if they actually cared about the case, the judge may actually still come out in your favor. So maybe don't attack him and criticize him so publicly. But it seems like they are using this for political purposes and political gain and care a lot less about what the result is in court. And that is, that is a very scary thing. That does lead us to constitutional crisis, I think. But what is the next step here? He's given them a deadline of tomorrow. He extended the deadline and said, look, I have these questions. You need to answer them. Yes, you've tried to remove this to a different judge, but that doesn't hold any water. You still have to abide by my rules, and I want to hear from you tomorrow.
All right, so we'll stay on this. Thank you for joining us to sift through the noise. Coming up for us, anger over Elon Musk's chainsaw to the federal government boils over at yet another town hall in ruby red parts of the country. We'll show it to you next.
Have you always had trouble with your weight? Me too.
Discover the power of Wegovy.
With Wegovy, I lost 35 pounds. And some lost over 46 pounds.
And I'm keeping the weight off.
I'm reducing my risk.
Wegovy is the only weight management medicine proven to reduce risk of major cardiovascular events such as death, heart attack, or stroke in adults with known heart disease and obesity.
But the dogs might die, and even if they don't, they're not going to be training new ones if they can't afford any of this stuff. So gradually, we'll have more to worry about when it comes to our flights, which I hear people have not been super comfortable about. The most offensive thing that the Trump administration has done thus far. Let's turn to it right now. Doge has gone too far. And if you've been watching for a while, you know that generally we don't call it that out of an utter lack of respect for the organization. We refer to it, as Francesca Fiorentini does, as doggy. But today I don't really feel comfortable doing that because Doge has unfortunately come after the doggies. All of them good boys and girls, by the way. But if Doge gets its way, some very good dogs who have been trained to protect us could literally die of starvation in the name of waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, does this sound hyperbolic? I'm sure that it does, but there's some evidence here. And so Fox News reporter Jennifer Griffin, it's a Fox News reporter, so Maga, you can't get mad at me, get mad at Fox News, obtained an email reportedly from the TSA's Security Operations National Explosives Detection Canine Program. I'm not going to repeat that, it's too long. And that email said this. They're talking about cuts, basically. And so as of the moment, all requests for everything to include, this is underlined in the email, vet visits, kenneling, dog food, etc., have been put on hold until we receive further guidance. I apologize for the confusion, but due to new guidance sent out last night, nothing is being approved this time. Once I receive an update, I will be sure to share with all of you, which I appreciate. And I'm sure the dogs will appreciate after a few days of no access to food, let alone the vet care and all that other stuff that I hear dogs need. But lots of dogs are weirdly obsessed with eating regularly, like almost every day, and so that's not good. And if you're not familiar with what like a bomb-sniffing dog does, yeah, they're trained and deployed to help protect us. They work with state and local law enforcement, canine teams, and that's offensive on its face. The idea that the little like kibble bucks are what they're cutting now, but to do that literally just days after Donald Trump posed in an incredibly awkward and uncomfortable way next to a dog to celebrate Canine Veterans Day. That dude does not feel comfortable around dogs. I would be hugging that dog. I would probably be getting in trouble for hugging that dog because you're probably not going to. He is standing so awkwardly there. But anyway, the facility that they're cutting funding to has over 300 dogs per year that are trained there. Okay, it costs on average about $33,000 to train a canine to detect explosives. I don't have exact figures on how much the doggy funerals will cost once they starve to death. But it's probably like $1,000, I would assume. More than 1,000 TSA canine teams are deployed nationwide to protect us, to do passenger and cargo screening. But the dogs might die, and even if they don't, they're not going to be training new ones if they can't afford any of this stuff. So gradually, we'll have more to worry about when it comes to our flights, which I hear people have not been super comfortable about recently anyway. But Tori, what do you make of this?
Okay. First of all, I'm a dog lover, as is much of America, and I assume many of your listeners and viewers. Mm-hmm. The fact that Trump doesn't like dogs and uses dogs all the time to discuss women poorly. He uses dogs. He was dirty like a dog. He did this like a dog. I'm not good at the impression either.
Choked like a dog.
He choked like a dog. I mean, dog is always used in Trump's language as a really negative, always, he just thinks they're dirty. And I just think America is such a dog-loving country that I don't trust anyone that doesn't like dogs, and I don't trust anyone that doesn't have a sense of humor. Two things he doesn't really have. But if I were a Democrat, okay, and I was actually interested in pushing back, unlike Schumer and unlike many of the other 76, 78, 80 plus, I would use this so strongly to push out the inefficiency and absurdity of doggy, and I'm going to use the same word, because if I saw a famous take with Jordan Klepper where he went to a Trump rally and he tried to just have a discussion, just a plain discussion, and of course it turned into a fight. Guess what he did next? He did the same thing, but he brought a golden retriever. Conversations were had. People were petting the dogs. The one thing that Republicans and Democrats can get together with are dogs. And the fact that he doesn't like dogs, I promise you, will upset many MAGA people.
they're
They
talking
have
about
dogs
doggies.
on their farms, they use it in their work. So if I'm a Democrat, I'm saying you are Kristi Noem at this point. You are,
oh my God.
You are Mitt Romney with that poor dog on the top of the car. But use this to show how silly, stupid, inhumane this is, and push it out, because you're the only person I see reporting on this. And if I'm going to actually fight back, this is like easy incendiary kindling to a fire that could start. Why is he taking out dogs? Why is he taking out normal people that have married to citizens? Why is he taking out people and then courts are making him rehire them back? That's the opposite of inefficiency.
Yeah.
And may I say to the dogs,
That is the official language taught to them by TSA. We did check that.
correct.
But yeah, and why is he continuing his war on men and masculinity? Dude hates dogs. He hates young married couples. Like, they're trying to start a family. They're trying to get it on, and they can't because of Trump. Why is he getting in the way of all of this? And by the way, I know it's cliche to say, but and I have a caveat. If you really don't like dogs, I don't necessarily trust you in general, but with the caveat that if instead you really like cats or something, then that's fine. That's fine. That's a preference thing, but you still have an attachment to nature. Trump doesn't like animals at all. That's strange to me.
And he doesn't like music. He doesn't like laughing. He doesn't have friendships.
He likes Ave Maria.
Oh yeah, and YMCA.
Yeah, YMCA. He likes, anyway. It also gives me an idea, by the way. I think AOC, when she runs for president, I think her VP pick should be her French Bulldog Deco.
I have no issue with that. I have no problem
That's a
with
ticket
this.
we could get behind. But
I'm all
anyway. Okay, let's turn away from the fun doggy news to the less fun doggy news, starting with this. Doge is going after our bomb-sniffing dogs, but that's not the only thing they're up to recently. They're engaging in more utterly dystopic and arguably illegal and unconstitutional action. See, they forced their way into a government office. Again, they've done that a lot. In this particular case, they especially had no call to be there. And there are a variety of ways that they decided to make it even worse than it had to be, but I'll let Rachel Maddow in this clip break down some of that.
And the Doge kids left when they were told they couldn't come in, but then the next day they came back with muscle. They came back with people who said they were U.S. Marshals. And we think those people were possibly armed. They were carrying guns. Now, the U.S. Marshal Service consistently will not comment on this. They will not say whether or not those people were actually U.S. Marshals. We have some reporting that suggests they may not have been U.S. Marshals. If there's a legal dispute as to whether or not you are allowed in a U.S. government building, and you cast that aside and say, we've got guns, and that's the grounds on which we're coming in, what that is an armed assault on the U.S. government. That is an armed assault on a U.S. government office. If the president has given his top campaign donor the ability to use physical force, the ability to use the force of arms against other parts of the U.S. government, we are in a different place than we thought we were.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to say that Rachel Maddow in the past hasn't occasionally moved past the facts, but I don't see her doing that right now. The richest man in the world bought Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and now he can just send his little 16-year-old buddies anywhere he wants, and maybe they have guns, and maybe they're marshals, or maybe they're just pretending to be. You don't get to find out. Also, you don't even get to know their names. He'll say that you're breaking the law if you ask who these people are that are breaking in to these government offices, and there's no check on any of this. There's not going to be any investigations. There's no inspectors general or anything like that. There's not going to be any lawsuits. Nobody's going to get locked up. He can create his own private militia and just dispatch it with weapons, maybe that they'll use wherever they want, even if they're not supposed to be there. Now, we've already had that happen multiple times. The reason that Rachel Maddow brought this up again is because they've done it again. So this time, they broke into the U.S. Institute of Peace. And importantly, that is a private independent agency that's not under the purview of the executive branch. And again, it's not the first time they've done this, but this is an especially egregious example, and Rachel Maddow's going to explain why.
Doge has broken into our building. The New York Times reports, quote, the U.S. Institute for Peace called the D.C. police on the Musk team members in an effort to stop them from trespassing because the Institute has control of its own building and the land it sits on. But instead, the D.C. police allowed them to enter and kicked out the Institute's officials.
Yeah, so at this point, what are they supposed to do? I mean, the law's being broken. They have no authority to be there, and the police have been asked, who do you side with? Do you side with the authoritarian executive branch that is breaking the law, or do you uphold the law? And they've sided with the overthrow, effectively, of law and order in America. So who are you supposed to turn to? You don't have the police. Under except they're not going to have the military. The richest man in the world has a private militia. What exactly are you supposed to do at this point? This is an utterly lawless regime. And we've been profiling multiple ways, just in today's episode, that is the case. And nobody really seems to have much of a problem with it. And just to clarify, we've already indicated this. This is an institute that works to resolve conflict. It's not under the authority of the executive branch. It's not a federal agency. It was created by Congress as a nonpartisan independent body way back under Ronald Reagan. The USIP owns and manages its headquarters. Doge has no authority there whatsoever. So armed people just broke in and trespassed and forced people out of a building they were legally allowed to be in. People should be in jail over this. If Elon Musk ordered them to do this, Elon Musk should be in jail for this. And if the police won't do it, then who is going to? Or are we further into the runtime of V for Vendetta than I thought we were at this point? So we have more, but Tori, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I think this is the question of the enforcers. And I know that sounds like your favorite movie, The Avengers, but what I really mean by I'm sorry to give you that dig, but at this point in my mind, a totalitarianism, sort of authoritarianism, where they are trespassing with or without guns, without names, without badges, we've reached a part in which the enforcers, which is, as you said, the militia, the police, all those people that we count on to stop trespassers and stop all this, now they have a choice. And the choice that we're starting to see is a pattern. And the pattern is, we're not going to listen to the judge. We're not going to listen to Congress. We're going to start listening to the leader. And when you start listening to your leader as a militia and a police, and you don't listen to the proper ways of governing, you have yourself a mob. You have yourself your own personal militia. And what scares me is that Elon Musk has no lid. There's no lid. Who's stopping Elon, who was not an elected official, who's coming in and doing this? So who are the enforcers? And I'm literally asking your audience because I don't know the answer. I want there to be DC police to understand these people trespassed into a private building and they need to leave. But at this point, the police are turning into, and I hate to go this far, I really don't, but I'm Jewish, okay? And I smell and feel familiar things when you start to gather the enforcers onto your side, and they will no longer listen to the law and order, but they will listen to one man or two with Musk. That's totalitarianism. That's where you see V for Vendetta. So there's an article again in New York Times. Are we farther along than we think? Yeah. We're way farther along when our enforcers don't have to show a badge. How about those people in Idaho who are like, who are you guys? Are you, who are you? And they're just taking them out. So just understand that there's three branches of government and then there's the enforcers. And if we've lost the enforcers, we've lost all strength and force. So that's V for very scary.
Yeah, and look, I don't know the individual cops that allowed this to happen. And let me just, maybe they love Elon Musk and love Musk. I don't know. Let's also just briefly consider before we break the possibility that they're now more terrified than they were before. That if they stand against them,
that's right.
That Musk's goons could start to gun them down or bash their heads in with flagpoles.
That's right.
Knowing that they'll get pardons.
You're absolutely right. There's nothing that can happen to them. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
The last time that cops stopped Trump's illegal actions, some of them died.
Yeah.
And the people that caused that are walking free. So I do sort of understand how cops might be terrified to go up against this fascist movement.
Very fair.
In any event, we're going to take our second break and we'll be back with more in a sec.
by what is happening at the grocery store, at school drop-off, and in these cities and towns and communities that are going to be absolutely bludgeoned on April 2nd by the tariffs.
Oh, I think you're right. And David, I want to join you in some of these town halls. I volunteer to be a part of it with you. Thank you for doing that, for the conversation that it will bring to constituents and voters who desperately want to be engaged, want to be heard, want to understand what's going on. Yes, Donald Trump, he thinks he's a big man. He tries to show himself as a very big man. But actually what voters are seeing, even those who voted for him, are seeing a man of very small actions, like the pettiness of removing the details from people who are at risk. He's a very small man in that he ran on bringing down the price of eggs, bringing down your cost of living. He was going to solve Ukraine in the first day. He didn't run to have Elon Musk run things. That's not what voters voted for. He's supposed to be such a strong man, and yet he's so weak. He offers surrender of Ukraine, and he offers it up to Mr. Putin. I hope somebody, and David, I'm sure you're paying attention to this, there have been a series of Fridays that have been so beyond the pale. In the Oval Office with Mr. Zelensky, February the 28th, beyond the pale. And then last Friday was the breaking point for me. The speech in the DOJ in the Great Hall. By the way, where were the rank and file? I don't believe they were there. These are beyond the pale breaks with the American public and breaks with what it is to be president of the United States and to be a leader of the American people.
Congresswoman, we love getting to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. David Jolly, thank you. We're going to give Alex the last word on the other side of a short break. Stay with us.
Well, would you look at that?
Jerry, you gotta see this.
Saying it. Trust me, after 15 walks, it's a little old. Yeah, I really should be retired by now. Wish I invested when I had the chance. To the moon. Unbelievable.
Stop waiting. Start investing. E-Trade from Morgan Stanley.
There's some things that work better together, like your workplace benefits and retirement savings. Voya helps you choose the right amounts without over or under investing, so you can feel confident in your financial choices.
Voya. Well planned, well invested, well protected.
Today, I choose us how to screen us for colon cancer. Yeah, on my land, not theirs. Give me Colorado or give me...
We can do that for you.
What, no battle?
Nope. Just a prescription.
Issue, and it's not really. So I wonder how far he's going to push this pro-life thing. But at this point, if I were a woman in Texas, and I'm not even a little bit exaggerating, I'd be looking to move elsewhere because I wouldn't find myself as equal as other people. And humans in Texas. I just would be fearful of my life there. I really would as a woman.
Yeah, I mean, the issue obviously is it's very difficult. Like, it's easy for me to be like, well, we do have some civilized states in this country, some that aren't, some that are, but you can't go. Like, and if your family's there, and if your job's there, your business is there. Yeah, it's really depressing. And so you've laid out, you know, at one point it would have seemed impossible. I mean, with a right, live 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years with a right, and then they decide, no, actually, it'd be better if you don't have that right. It seems like madness, but they did it.
Right.
And now they're locking up doctors or midwives in this particular case, and they'll take a look to see how people respond to that.
Right.
And if there isn't a big enough uproar, then they get to do what they really want, which is lock up the women.
That's exactly right. It's all about the power of the women.
That's what they want, man. They want to see the women punished. Trump said it, remember? He was talking with Chris, whatever. Oh my God, I've forgotten his name. That's delightful. The dude from MSNBC. Anyway, he said there should be punishment for the women. Not Chris Hayes. Chris, like on his name, but it's relevant. He actually got that. Chris Matthews, thank you. Chris Matthews. Our producer's the best in the business. Anyway, Chris Matthews. And yeah, he said there should be punishment for the woman. Yeah. And I don't even think Trump, is one of the Republicans that most wants it. You know that Stephen Miller gets gets off on the idea of women daring to violate what the box he thinks they should be in, rotting in prison for years. There are a lot of Republicans that would love it. They want to see it. They may not feel comfortable doing it just yet.
We're almost back,
They're going to lock
buddy.
up some doctors. They're going to lock up some midwives. They're going to lock up some nurses, some pharmacists, some people who mailed some stuff, and then see, well, if people are freaking out, then we can put the women in there. And there was talk about, like, whether they're going to make them wear, you know, the red outfits from Handmaid's Tale. They've already got plenty of the women wearing red hats.
John.
They've agreed that my rights aren't that important, you know? I
That's
care
a great
more about immigration or whatever. I don't care. Take away my rights. So whoop, and then you put it on.
That's a
what
great
they've
call.
done.
That's right. That's a great call. The red cloaks to the red hat. And it really is about suppressing the freedom and the right of women. It really is. It's not about the unborn. It's about putting them down and keeping them down. And in Texas, they're doing a good job. So let's keep fighting for Texas women, please.
Yeah, 100%. I lived in Texas for like 5 or 6 years. I care about what happens there, and I hate to see the population being abused in this way. Not just with the laws that are being passed, but the fact that this is all their politicians talk about.
That's it.
It's just about stopping immigration, taking away your rights. That's it. Maybe more guns. Texas has actual problems. Every time there's a cold spell and a heat wave, they're reminded of the problems they have. They don't fix them because they've got people distracted with other stuff.
Very good point. Shiny objects, John. Shiny objects.
100%. Well, we are going to end our first hour. To those in the podcast, thank you so much for listening. There's more to come in the aftermath for those watching live, though, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Workplace benefits and retirement savings. Voya provides tools that help you make the right investment and benefit choices so you can reach today's financial goals to a more confident future.
Oh yeah, well planned, well invested, well protected.
I think I changed my mind about these glasses.
Yeah, it happens. That's why VisionWorks gives you 100 days to change your mind. It's simple. Anything else I can help you with?
Like what?
VisionWorks. See the difference.
You've got a subscription for streaming movies and music, maybe even one for food. But what about when it's your water line streaming? Repairs are expensive. Good contractors are hard to find. Plan from HomeServe, it's like a subscription for peace of mind. For one small monthly fee, when a covered system breaks, we'll send a qualified contractor and pay for the repair. Why worry? Get HomeServe and chill.
Plans from HomeServe start at just $4.99 a month. Call 1-833-735-4495 or visit homeserve.com.
Super Beta Prostate is the #1 urologist recommended prostate supplement. And now you can find it in every Walmart nationwide. Don't ignore your prostate health. Get Super Beta Prostate.
Custom Ink helps us motivate our students to custom care. I love how Custom Ink takes care of everything we need so we can focus on the kids.
We make it easy to buy all your groups with high-quality custom apparel, accessories, and promo products, all backed by our guarantee at customlink.com.
Donald Trump is defending the mass firings of federal watchdogs.
Our federal government now can discriminate against the citizens of the country.
We're all watching and waiting to see who's going to prove you right.
Don't miss the weekends, Saturday and Sunday mornings at 8
On MSNBC.
I think the single dumbest phrase in military history is our diversity is our strength. I think our strength is our unity. Our strength is our shared purpose. In this department, we will treat everyone equally. We will treat everyone with fairness. We will treat everyone with respect. And we will judge you as an individual by your merit and by your commitment to the team and the mission.
Hi again, everybody. It's 5 o'clock in New York. Apparently, the Defense Department treating others with respect and judging an individual's commitment to the mission includes a very brazen and comprehensive effort at rewriting history, removing stories that honor people of color and minorities who have served in the past in the U.S. military. Today, the page of the Pentagon's website acknowledging the service of American hero Jackie Robinson displayed a, quote, page not found error message. Jackie Robinson served in the U.S. Army during World War II before he went on to become a baseball legend, breaking the color barrier of Major League Baseball in 1947. The URL of Jackie Robinson's page was updated to include DEI before the story's headline, indicating that it was likely taken down as part of the Trump administration's and Pete Hegseth's purge of everything and anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion now, yesterday, or all these years ago. Jeff Passan, a baseball columnist for ESPN, noticed that the website had been removed and posted this, quote, "The ghouls who did this should be ashamed. Jackie Robinson was the embodiment of an American hero. Fix this now." Now, that edict and the outcry from Passan and others had its intended effect, we are happy to say. Late today, Jackie Robinson's page was restored. Jackie Robinson's was not the only page caught up in this purge of anti-DEI fever at the Pentagon. A webpage dedicated to the service of Ira Hayes, a Native American who served in the Marines and was one of the 6 men raising the flag, American flag, at Iwo Jima in this iconic photograph, was taken down. According to the Washington Post, multiple articles about the Navajo code talkers who were critical to America's victory at Iwo Jima and the wider Pacific theater of the Second World War were also removed, along with a profile of Tonawanda Seneca officer who drafted the terms of the Confederacy's surrender at Appomattox toward the end of the Civil War. The AP reported that according to a database it obtained references to a World War II Medal of Honor recipient, the Enola Gay aircraft that dropped an atomic bomb on Japan, and the first one to pass Marine infantry training are among the tens of thousands of photos and online posts marked for deletion. There was a removal of video footage of the Tuskegee Airmen in training videos for members of the U.S. Air Force, although they were later put back by the Pentagon after facing a similar backlash. Also returned after being removed was a webpage dedicated to Major General Charles Calvin Rogers, a Black Medal of Honor recipient who served in Vietnam. And reporting in the military news outlet Task and Purpose found the Arlington National Cemetery's website had, quote, scrubbed dozens of pages on grave sites and educational materials that include histories of prominent Black, Hispanic, and female service members buried in the cemetery. Richard Brookshire, co-CEO of the Black Veterans Project, had a scathing indictment of these efforts, saying to The Guardian, quote, the full-throttled attack on Black leadership, dismantling of civil rights protections, imposition of unjust anti-DEI regulations, and unprecedented historical erasure across the Department of Defense is a clear sign of a new Jim Crow being propagated by our commander-in-chief, end quote. That is where we start the hour. Some of our favorite experts and friends. Retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Amy McGrath is here. She is the founder of Democratic Majority Action PAC. Also joining us, Democratic strategist, MSNBC political analyst Basil Smikle. And with me at the table, New York Times editorial board member, MSNBC contributor Mara Gay. Amy, I start with you. Your reaction.
Well, look, they can try to change history, but they can't change the simple fact that minorities and women have been serving in our military, and women and minorities have been serving at very high levels, doing very hard jobs and performing extremely well. Look, when you think about women in the military, you know, we have 5,000 women right now serving in the infantry, armor, artillery, 500 officers serving in those roles, hundreds of pilots, over 150 women, female Ranger, U.S. Army Rangers. They can't take that away. But here's what this is all about. They're trying to hide this. They're trying to hide this. Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump, and those leaders, they're trying to pretend that these accomplishments didn't happen. because those accomplishments offend
You dropped it.
them. And it offends them because they're, small, immature, and insecure men. And that's what this is all about.
When they got caught, they put Jackie Robinson's page back up, but they also issued a statement, and I do want to read their statement to you. It's from the Pentagon today, quote, "Everyone at the Defense Department loves Jackie Robinson, as well as the Navajo Code Talkers, the Tuskegee Airmen, the Marines at Iwo Jima, and so many others. We salute them for their strong and, in many cases, heroic service to the country, full stop. Do not view or highlight them through the prism of immutable characteristics of race, ethnicity, or sex. We do so only by recognizing their patriotism and dedication to the war-fighting mission, like every other American who has worn the uniform. DEI, discriminatory equity ideology is what they call it, does the opposite. It divides the force, erodes unit cohesion, and interferes with the service's war-fighting mission. We're pleased by the rapid compliance across the department with the directive removing DEI content from all platforms. In the rare cases that content is removed either deliberate by mistake that is out of the clearly outlined scope of the directive, we instruct the components and they correct the content, recognizes our heroes for their dedicated service alongside fellow Americans, period." So, Amy, do you understand that to mean that if you're famous and black, female, or Native American, we'll put you back up?
Yes. I mean, the whole thing is just really dumb, because what you're doing is you're just erasing inspiration. Nicole, when I started out as a young Marine officer, going through flight school, guess what? My heroes were John Glenn and Alan Shepard. Yeah. But you know what? My heroes were also Rosemary Mariner, and one of the first women pilots in the U.S. Navy, and Matisse Wright, the first black woman naval flight officer, because I wanted to be a naval flight officer. I knew those names because the military championed them. I knew the name of Charlie Bolden because the military championed one of the first black NASA astronauts and fighter pilots. And you know what? They inspired me just as much as Alan Shepard and John Glenn. Because why? They looked like me. I looked at them and said, they could do it, I can do it too. That's what this is all about. You're just trying to erase inspiration here. It's really dumb. And here's the part of it that hits home.
You stay here. I'll be right back.
We need to recruit the best talent in this country.
seat.
For our military of the
You tangled
future.
up.
And so in my mind, this is just dumb.
Here, let me help you.
Basil, where is your head on all this today?
Well, to Amy's point and to
You're
the
fixed.
points that have been made, this is a complete erasure. So, you know, Black Americans in particular are overrepresented in the military in many respects. Black men
None of that.
in military service,
Sit down.
Black women in civilian service. So let's level set us. There have been Black Americans that have fought for this land.
Well, it's the first time I've seen that work for a crossing person.
Since the Revolutionary War. If you move forward in time, the Harlem Hellfighters,
For when you have a
example, saw some
dog
of the most
barking in your
significant
ear
service
trying
of
to
World
distract
War
you too.
and carried one of America's, if not the American original art form, jazz, to Paris and to Europe.
Here,
Fast
show 'em this.
forward to the Tuskegee Airmen. Two of them I got to know very well later in their lives. Percy Sutton, a business leader and politician, attorney to Malcolm X and his family. Also Roscoe Brown, Dr. Roscoe Brown, a scholar and teacher in the City University of New York system. And they talked a lot about these sort of dual identities. They traveled across the world and fought in Europe. And when they saw the American flag, they thought about safety and they thought about home. But when they got home, they experienced some of the most horrific discrimination that you could imagine. And considering that, even after the war, the New Deal that featured very significantly the GI Bill to help and support veterans coming home, they weren't even allowed to embrace and take advantage of a lot of those opportunities specifically because of their race. So when you take this erasure and you try to write this singular narrative about America, what they're saying is that for Black Americans in particular, and certainly for people of color and for women, DEI is essentially amounting to an asterisk, that your Americanness and your patriotism isn't quite like everybody else's if we acknowledge your contributions. And you know what? There is no American history without their history. And as others have said, it flies in the face of what history, what the kind of history that we should be telling and teaching.
What is at its core? I mean, I hate to separate DEI from the erasure, but they feel like two distinct missions, right? The war on DEI is like a political steroid to the base. They don't even, I don't think they're even positive why they're cheering, but they cheer it.
You're free. Hey, bud. You want to get out?